COVID-19 is an infectious disease caused by a new coronavirus introduced to humans for the first time. It is spread from person to person, mainly through the droplets produced when an infected person speaks, coughs, or sneezes. These droplets can land in the mouths or noses of people who are nearby. These droplets are too heavy to travel far in the air. They only travel approximately 1 meter and quickly settle on surfaces. This is the reason person-to-person spread is happening mainly between close contacts. The exact time that the virus can survive on surfaces is not yet known. So it is wise to clean surfaces regularly, particularly in the vicinity of people infected with COVID-19. Hands touch many surfaces, which can be contaminated with the virus. You should therefore avoid touching your eyes, nose, or mouth, since contaminated hands can transfer the virus from the surface to yourself. When coughing or sneezing, cover your mouth and nose with the bend of your elbow or use a disposable tissue. If a tissue is used, discard it immediately into a closed bin. The most effective way to prevent the spread of the new coronavirus is to clean your hands frequently with an alcohol-based hand rub or soap and water. This will eliminate the virus if it is on your hands. Stay healthy and prevent the spread of COVID-19.
This one's for the records. This is historic. On Tuesday, May 15th, you can be a millionaire. A lotto jackpot of $1 million. Yes, you heard right. $1 million.
A new home, car, or that college education.
Lotto, you have to be in it to win it.
Next lotto jackpot,
$1 million.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Roundtable Talk. Today we are going to have that very important food talk, agriculture and food security in the time of a pandemic that we are currently facing. To talk the talk this evening, we have our Minister of Agriculture, SABOTO Caesar, and of course, he's the longest-serving CARICOM Agriculture Minister at present. We also have Mr. TERRAL MAPP, who is an economist and also the Chief Operating Officer at the Medicinal Cannabis Authority. Thank you so much for joining us today on this program, very important program.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Definitely, it's an honor and a pleasure to be here.
We have our instructions about the things that we have to do to keep safe and to help prevent the spread of COVID. The washing your hands regularly, staying at home, cleaning surfaces, all of these things. But there's one thing that we all must do, and that's eat. We all need food. What is the status of the agriculture sector in the midst of COVID-19 here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Minister?
I want to say a pleasant evening to all the persons who are following this program. You know, I usually follow it on a regular basis, and I want to compliment you on a job well done.
Thank you.
Food security and food sovereignty are two very important facets in the development of any country. And in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we have spent a lot of time, effort, and energy to ensure that we engender a developmental path focusing on issues touching and concerning food security. Currently, we are witnessing significant disruptions in food supply chains globally. And when we look at our major import supply chains coming out of the United States of America, United Kingdom, and also intra-regionally, we are getting a clear indication that because of COVID-19, many of these factory spaces, you have thousands of persons working in close proximity to each other. They cannot continue like that, and you're seeing significant closures internationally. So the outlook is one where you're going to have importers who will be making orders for certain commodities and will not be able to get the supplies either at all or on time. Therefore, as a country, as a people, we have to redouble our efforts as it pertains to issues of food production. And I want to congratulate the Ministry of Finance, the Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Planning, for being very quick at the draw. When some persons had just started to appreciate what was happening, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we were already in Parliament addressing the issue of a stimulus package. And it's very important that we take that into consideration. And it came in the form of a supplementary budget. We just had completed our budgetary exercise for 2020 going into 2021. And for agriculture, we had an allocation of $48 million. But when we did an assessment of the impact that this pandemic could have on the resources which were allocated, we definitely saw a need to increase the budgeted spendings that we had allocated. Because when we were preparing for the budget for 2020, no one knew that in the very early stages of the unfolding of these expenditures, that we would have such a grim outlook when it comes to the whole issue of the pandemic. And we did an increase, taking up the budget for agriculture, forestry, fisheries, rural transformation, industry and labor up to $58 million. You had basically an addition of $10 million, which is significant. We allocated significant sums to the Farmer Support Company. And the Farmer Support Company has the task of assigning credit to farmers. It's very important when you look at the factors of production, land, labor, and capital. There are a lot of persons who have land, different sizes. Persons are physically able to work, but when it comes to the investment, the capital side of it, sometimes it is an issue. Therefore, a little over $5 million was placed in the Farmer Support Company. And we have several programs. First of all, we looked at the green shoots in the economy. And one of the major areas touches and concerns the blue economy and the need for growth as it pertains to the extraction of marine resources.
And the blue economy, for those people who may not know
blue
what
economy,
you're talking about.
speaking about the marine life, the seas, the oceans.
Okay.
And especially since we are an archipelago of islands, we have significant seascape. So we decided to build on the excellent platform that we had hitherto the pandemic, where we saw an exponential increase in the exports of fish and fish products from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And that came about because we privatized and had a private-public partnership for all the fishery centers for the most part. In Oya, Kialiakwa, Union Island, in Canawan, Kingstown, and in Bequia. So the idea arose within the fishing community that persons wanted some extra capital to buy boats, so more persons could go out to fish. And a lot of this fishing is taking place around FADs, fish aggregating devices. So it's much more cost effective to do that type of fishing. And we made an allocation of $2.8 million for the purchasing of 40 fishing boats. 29.
We'll talk some more about that initiative later on, of course.
Yes. So that's the 29 feet boats and 115 horsepower engines. And currently, we are working with the persons who come to St. Vincent to manufacture them. So that process has started. So to answer directly the issue of where we are with the stimulus from the boats, the issue of the sourcing is ongoing, and we are in contact with the manufacturers. They have the specifications. We consulted with the fisher folk, and they're very happy with the specifications, and we should begin the production of these boats very soon.
So that would also be a form part of another local initiative, basically, because we're not going to be bringing in these vessels.
They will be produced here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. On the issue of fertilizer, because very important, the plants, they need nutrients. And we're coming out of a very long drought. If you drive around St. Vincent and the Grenadines, it's one of the driest periods we've ever had for the entire decade.
And we'll talk about that too. We'll talk about that.
A very, very, very dry period. And we've seen the rains started, and farmers are in need of fertilizer. The Farmer Support Company is going to do 100% financing for the purchasing of fertilizer. And the Farmer Support Company provides support on credit. But the cabinet has decided that the government would provide 100% financing, but the fertilizer will be sold to the farmers at half price. So what this means to a farmer is that if you need a sack of fertilizer, you get your document from the Farmer Support Company, a sack, 100 sacks, your prerequisites. You get the document from the Farmer Support Company, and working in tandem with the extension officer, because we have to ensure that what you take is exactly what you need, so that you don't overtake or undertake. And you take that document to the input warehouse, and if the fertilizer is $70 for the sack, you get 100% credit. You don't have to pay any money. But when you are repaying, you're repaying only $35. You're not repaying the whole $70. So there's a discount component and 100% credit. And this is well received by the farmers in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So that's the fertilizer. And it applies not only to fertilizer, but to all inputs sold at the input warehouse. So
those are some of the things that are definitely coming out of the stimulus initiative.
Yes, and have started already. Started already. So we are now in the process of the assessment, where persons are coming in to bring their requests, and the extension officers are working with the Farmer Support Company to ensure that the documents are in line for persons to take to the input warehouse.
And we'll talk some more about that later on, probably later down in the program. But I want to bring in Mr. MAPP here a little bit to talk about the pre-crisis outlook for St. Vincent and the Grenadines before we take the first break. And do you think that agriculture can, in fact, prosper during a time of crisis?
Yes. Thank you, Teresa. And, you know, this is my second time on this program, so I want to thank you for inviting me here again, and the Minister for giving me the privilege to be on a program with him and such an important issue at an important time. I want to say a pleasant good evening to the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and a special evening to the Medicinal Cannabis Authority staff, and in particular the staff within the Inspectorate Division, of which I have the honor to lead. The COVID crisis started off as a health crisis and has evolved into an economic crisis. But pre-COVID, St. Vincent and the Grenadines actually had a positive economic outlook. And I think it is safe for me to say that St. Vincent and the Grenadines was on the verge of an economic takeoff. Why do I say that? So you look at the international community. The international community was doing quite well. The economies of the USA, the European economies, Canadian economies were shaking off the shackles from the 2008 financial crisis. So we were seeing growth in the international economy, and we know the spillover benefits from the international economy doing well, the global economy. We were seeing it in tourism, where if you take, for instance, the cruise industry, I mean, in 2015, our cruise number, total cruise passenger was 82,000 persons, and it increased by over 206% to 250,000 persons in 2019, which is impressive growth. Stopover arrivals were up. Arrivals from America, Canada, England were up. America and England in particular up more than 10%. We see the Grassy Bay Marina, which was built in Canaan, was attracting significant yacht arrivals. We see in the construction industry, the government had a comprehensive package of construction projects ranging from the PAVE, the Kingston Port Modernization Project. You had the hotels, the Marriott Hotel, the Hilton Hotel in Diamond, and you had the Black Sand Resort, 10 villas being built right now. We had Rainforest to come on board. We had the Kingston Cleanup Project. So there was a package, and then we had the RDVRP, which was projected to create 600 jobs. We had the R-Route project. So you had a comprehensive set of projects as it relates construction.
And we also had the medicinal cannabis industry, which is...
I was getting there. There's so many to talk about. I mean, when you look at the budget, we actually had the largest budget ever presented in 2020, $1.2 billion with capital estimates of over $300 million. So, and I dive into agriculture. We had just resolved the issues with respect to currency with Trinidad.
Yeah.
So agriculture, root crop export to Trinidad was on a part of improvement. Barbados' economy was starting to do well, you know, following the adjustment programs with IMF. So we were seeing higher demand for root crops from Barbados. And then we had the Blackfish project. You know, we had livestock. We had the bilateral agreement with Grenada, where livestock were being exported to Grenada. Over 10 million livestock exported to Grenada since this arrangement has been forged. And I want to touch on fish, because the minister mentioned exponential, but it's quite a big word. You know, it's a huge word. What does he mean when he says exponential increase in fish? In 2015, fish export was $1.5 million, 2015. 2019, fish export was $8 million. I want to repeat, fish export in 2015 was 1.5 million. And in 2019, it grew to 8 million. And the minister did not mention the jobs that were created in the fishing industries. Over 100 jobs were created as a result of his initiative to lease out the government-owned fishing facilities to local investors. And we had in the banking system, we were seeing credit extended by banks and credit unions increasing at a rapid pace. Banks were improving their non-performing loans portfolio. So the non-performing loans as a ratio of loans was declining to the 5% recommended benchmark. So if you look at the fundamentals, the macroeconomic fundamentals, and I want to add to our international reserves at the Eastern Caribbean Bank was rapidly increasing. So if you look at all the fundamentals, I think it's safe for me to say that St. Vincent and the Grenadines was on the verge and the path for economic takeoff pre-COVID. Does agriculture has a role to play? agriculture has a very important role to play in stabilization of the economy.
We talk about that when we come back. We need to take a break at this very moment, but you'll develop on that point when we continue in the next segment. Back in just a moment.
This virus, called 2019 nCoV, is new and we are still learning about it. From what we know now, it can make some people a little sick with a slight runny nose. Other people get more sick and can have difficulty breathing and develop pneumonia. Some people get very sick and need to be hospitalized. Among those, unfortunately, some have died. While we still need to learn more about how the disease affects people, thus far, most of those that died had other underlying health issues. This information will change as we learn more about this disease. WHO will continue to provide updates as more information becomes available. If you need more information on the new coronavirus, check the WHO website at who.int.
This one's for the records. This is historic. On Tuesday, May 5th, you can be a millionaire.
A lotto jackpot of
$1 million. Yes, you heard right. $1 million.
a new home, car, or that college education.
Lotto, you have to be in it to win it.
Next lotto jackpot.
$1 million.
Welcome back, and just to remind you that you can be a part of the talk by sending your questions, comments, concerns via our Facebook page, or you can also participate by viewing us on YouTube. TERRAL MAPP, you were making a point about whether agriculture can in fact thrive in a crisis such as the one we're facing.
Yes, thank you, Teresa. Well, the agriculture sector is actually recession resilient. What do I mean by that? In a crisis, and I think you and the minister alluded to this earlier, people focus on need and people move away from luxury. So the tourism industry is seen as a luxury commodity. That's why you find now the countries that are heavily dependent on tourism are impacted far heavily than countries that have a mix. And I want to go back to a statement made by the Minister of Finance in his 2020 budget. He spoke to having that optimal mix, that balance. You have an economy. I mean, tourism will help you advance, but tourism swings. When the global economy is doing good, tourism is doing good. When the global economy is doing bad, tourism does bad.
And we have a former Minister of Tourism who attests to that.
So the tourism industry is quite volatile, and the agricultural industry is not elastic, responsive to changes in income. It's a need, and when it's time for a crisis, people go back to their basic needs. So the agriculture sector is what is going to help us propel out of this crisis. We know that the tourism industry has come to an halt right now, and that's consistent with theory, as I said. But if you look at international markets, the stock market, for instance, you would see that while stock prices are falling for all sorts of commodities, oil, gold, metals, stock prices for agricultural commodities are remain constant. remain stable and food prices are stable because food is a necessity. And even if you look right now, we saw the articles in the newspaper with the minister at the port shipping out food. So we are still earning foreign exchange from food, but the other industries are not bringing in anything right now. So the agriculture sector will help us to ride out of this crisis quickly.
There's a question. Someone wants to know, are there any plans to embark on a major manufacturing policy initiative? We are still raw materials based in agriculture. Minister?
Yes. If I come back to the stimulus package, there is a sum of $1.5 million allocated to target agro-processors. It's very important that we add value instead of just purely exporting the raw material. We have a policy whereby we want to increase the livestock production base in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We're the largest exporter of livestock in the OECS. And we don't want to come out of this period only as persons who are exporting livestock, but we want to go into the processing. And I want the young persons who are listening to be very much aware that the PRIME program takes care of the needs of persons who are looking for capital to invest.
So there's a program.
So there's a program, and their money is allocated for that. And I am aware that persons are already going to draw down on monies. For example, the persons who want to go into the coconut oil industry, persons who want to address issues with cocoa, with coffee, at a cottage and at a small to medium scale level. We must not forget that we have seen a significant growth in manufacturing in St. Vincent and the Grenadines with the advent of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Cocoa Company producing and exporting chocolate in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. When you go to the supermarkets today and you look at the section for the seasonings, we have Vinci Fresh, where over $10 million was spent, and it was financed by a loan from the Alba Bank. And I really want to thank the government and people of Venezuela for their assistance. And because of this, we export a lot of condiments and spices, nicely packaged, to other islands in the region. So sometimes when persons look at what we're doing in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and you don't see the whole thing at once, you may want to say that a lot of manufacturing is not going on. But when you go to the supermarkets and you see the number of products marked made in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, some of the best pepper sauces, jams and jellies, and we're turning a lot of the commodities which went to waste 5, 15, 20 years ago into commodities that we can preserve and can be on the shelves, not only in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but throughout the OECS and CARICOM.
Yes, I just want to add to that, Minister. I was watching a program with Tony Regisford, and he was speaking to some industries doing good in the crisis. He mentioned flour, ECGC doing good. So I did some investigation. The data is showing that for the first quarter of 2020, flour export actually grew by 30%. The value of flour export grew by 30%, $1.7 million growth in flour to $7.7 million. So that is real life example of food production thriving in the midst of a crisis. And I have said to the minister that we need to, while agriculture is important, he is also the Minister of Industries, and he needs to find time and labor to give support to the industries, because ECGC is the largest consumer of electricity. So we need ECGC to do well so that VINLE can do well. There is that correlation in the economy. ECGC is also a large employer, which touches the ambit of the minister. So the audience asked the question about manufacturing, and we are seeing manufacturing, anything related to food, striving in the crisis, while tourism and those other luxury-related commodities are being affected significantly.
In fact, when we look at the numbers for the first three months of the year, we have seen a 45% increase in the exports in terms of the volume. We are now going into markets with a lot of different commodities: British Virgin Islands, Anguilla, St. Martin, Antigua, St. Kitts and Nevis. A lot going to Trinidad and Tobago, and I really want to thank the government and people of Trinidad and Tobago for ensuring that we kept life and living going as it pertains to our export trade. It wasn't easy. The traffickers played a significant role when a lot of persons were locking down. The traffickers said, even if we can't go to Trinidad physically, we're going to send the goods, and we're going to...
They took the initiative.
They took the initiative. And, you know, when we decided to send down the goods, it took trust and honesty on the receiving end to get the goods, to sell the goods, and to send back the money. And it is happening in a very seamless way. In fact, it's the first time we have ever had. Last week was the first time.
Electronic
yes, the paperless transaction.
Yes.
Paperless transaction in us sending goods to Trinidad and Tobago. When Barbados was closed when they closed their local markets for about 2 weeks, we saw a reduction in the exports to Barbados, but now it's reopened. We are picking up for that lost space. And I really want to thank our farmers. I consider our farmers as frontline workers in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. When we see a lot of persons were saying that we should go inside and lock up, the farmer said we will go and we will continue to ensure that food security is preserved.
You mentioned that farmers are indeed considered to be frontline people. Are there any special precautions that they should take, or are they being asked to take, so that they too can help in preventing the spread of COVID-19 in St. Vincent and the Grenadines?
At every step of the way, we have asked our farmers and our fishers to adhere to the protocols advised by the Ministry of Health and Wellness. We have assisted with the distribution of face masks. We have assisted in terms of the hand washing, sanitizing. We have held a lot of consultations in the different farming communities. And this was 2 weeks before we got into the real heat of the discussion with COVID. That was the time when we could still gather in groups. And the cooperative platform is doing excellent work in ensuring that the information is disseminated. And I am confident that the farmers, they have the information, and we have to continue to reassure them and to send more information to them so that they could keep abreast with the best practices going forward.
Do we have enough food?
Yes, St. Vincent and the Grenadines is food secured. However, with further disruptions in the international supply chain, it is putting a significant strain on our food resources, especially when we are seeing a significant increase in the demand for food to be exported. We got a call from a trader from the ABC Islands, Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao. And when we looked at the quantities that they wanted, when we are noticing today the number of young persons who before probably were working in the tourism industry, persons were doing different things in different service areas, are saying that they want to enter the line of becoming a trader. We have had over 20-something new applicants who want to register as traders, and they want to move large quantities. it is that reality that justifies why we have to put $10 million immediately to ensure that our production keeps pace and even outstrips the demand for food to be exported to a lot of these countries. I know about 5 years ago, when we started to export cattle to Grenada, the talk around town was, Sabi is going to send away all the cattle. Well, what are we going to eat? And what we did, we used the science. We had the artificial insemination. We had the banana company measures that gave us significant sums to bring in animals from overseas. And I'm happy today that St. Vincent and the Grenadines is considered as the breadbasket of the Southern Caribbean.
And I think that's a good note on which to take our second break. We'll be right back.
Channel 114. Channel 114.
This one's for the records. This is historic. On Tuesday, May 5th, you can be a millionaire.
A lotto jackpot of
$1 million. Yes, you heard right. $1 million.
a new home, car, or that college education.
Lotto, you have to be in it to win it.
Next lotto jackpot.
$1 million.
Welcome back. The last segment, we left with the knowledge that there is food for all. There is enough food, and I think that is very important news. There's food for us. There's food for us to help feed our neighbors.
Yes.
Okay, good news. Let's talk about information as one of the factors of production.
Yes. Now, the minister mentioned traditionally there were 4 factors of production: capital, labor, land, entrepreneurship. But in this modern world, information has evolved as one of the most important factors of production, because information is needed to guide decision making and to guide the success of policies at the broad level. I mean, if we weren't studying COVID and following the science, how do we recommend policies to battle the COVID? Even the minister said about the government taking the initiative early to take the stimulus package to Parliament. That is as a result of studying the information. Now for us, I want to just adjust how we use information at the Medicinal Cannabis Authority and touch on cannabis. Internationally, we have been studying what has been taking place, because we are not building a cannabis industry in isolation. The cannabis industry is export-oriented. So we have been studying what has been taking place. Amidst the crisis, cannabis sale is at a record high internationally, because persons have been actually stockpiling cannabis. They had the last couple of weeks ago, they had the 420 event, that's the annual event, and reports showed that the event generated record high sales. What is taking place internationally too is that cannabis is deemed as an essential good. So it's not a non-essential, and dispensaries have been kept open, and online sales of cannabis have been growing rapidly. So the investors overseas are doing well, and they are knocking down our doors. They want the license. We have been seeing increased interest from investor entities, and
since the crisis.
Yes, since the crisis, they are knocking down our doors. They are coming in. They are inquiring. Those who have been applying, they are pushing ahead. Many of those who have paid the license, some, like we have investor entities who have over 20 persons employed right now, building out infrastructure, fencing, assembling greenhouses. So the cannabis industry, I mean, we have been impacted in the sense that some of the consultants who were supposed to come in to help assemble the manufacturing plants, the equipment, like in April, we were scheduled, we had the plan to launch our first manufacturing plant, but the consultant who was supposed to come in to set up the plant and so forth, because of the travel restrictions, they couldn't come in. We have investors who have ordered equipment from China, but because of the travel restrictions and so forth, those equipments are delayed. But notwithstanding, we have been following the information, and the outlook for the cannabis industry remains positive.
Now that we're on the topic of medicinal cannabis, can the traditional cultivator access any kind of assistance under this stimulus package? Minister?
Yes, and it goes back to the issue of information as a factor of production, and the traditional cultivator getting the information, and the information about the farmer support company and how you access the resources. How do you go about the processes which are out there? Yes, we have always said to the traditional cultivators that you have to establish a diversified production platform. It can't just be pure cannabis, because as we seek to increase our exports in various commodities, you have a significant manpower within the traditional cannabis community, and also great expertise in growing non-cannabis commodities. And we are working with the traditional cultivators. In fact, the list has been presented to the Farmers Support Company, and we are going to see a dovetailing of efforts between the Farmers Support Company on the one hand, working with the traditional farmers, and the Medicinal Cannabis Authority working with the traditional cannabis cultivators, coming together to establish a very dynamic production platform here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. As it pertains to the information, you can either contact your extension officer, you can contact the admin that is set up at all the agricultural stations. You can get information from the input warehouse, from the Medicinal Cannabis Authority. And persons, for example, in livestock production, we are targeting to purchase some 2,000 goats and sheep. 2,000 goats and sheep, we are looking at 1,000 pigs and about 200 heads of cattle. We have started discussions with the private sector in Barbados, in Belize, in Jamaica, here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, because we have to get the animals so that we could start the distribution.
How will the distribution be done?
So persons will register with the Farmers Support Company, and it will be cross-referenced with the veterinary division in the Ministry of Agriculture. We will come, make sure and visit that you have a place for the safekeeping of the animal, because the last thing we want to do is to give people animals and they are all over the place as a nuisance. Mm-hmm. You know, I get many calls from time to time to come into a particular area. I won't mention the area because the number of heads of cattle roaming, even though we have to promote the production, we have to ensure that life and living goes on, and we have to be a brother's keeper. So as it pertains to the animals, and I want to mention especially that last Christmas we did not have to import any eggs whatsoever. In fact, the Zero Hunger program purchased over $100,000 worth of eggs and distributed it in the different communities and to different institutions, because we want to set up a $10 million egg industry where we begin to export eggs. In fact, we have brought in the crates already for the special packaging for us to export eggs, something that we never did before, that we are going to advance now on that kind of scale. As it pertains to the arrowroot industry, there's a sum of $3,000 allocated, $3 million allocated in the stimulus, some $1.5 million as a subvention, and another $1.5 million allocated for the purchasing of arrowroot starch, because we have 500,000 pounds of arrowroot starch. And this definitely is going to impact positively on persons in that geographic area, North Windward, who have basically worked with the arrowroot industry over many years. I see you're smiling because your mind has gone to Madongo Biggs.
And I haven't seen my starches yet to make.
You haven't seen your starches yet.
But I just want to add.
Before you add, somebody wants to know what we're going to be doing to alleviate the problem of predial larceny.
Yes, the issue of predial larceny is a very involved one. We have legislation on the books. We had rural constables, but we are working with the government of Belize to address the issue of having a national registration program for animals. So we want to do the advanced tagging. So that's from the livestock standpoint. Mm-hmm. On the other issue, when you're speaking now about produce, we are going to work with the police to up the patrols. And I am noticing something coming out of certain countries in Africa, that where you have cooperative platforms and you have more persons working together, they actually act as guardians
for each other. And it is something that we are really working very hard to develop. In fact, we already have about 16 registered cooperatives, and it is definitely going to have a positive impact. I really want to send a very stern message to those persons who are participating in this illicit activity. We have here in a stimulus package for young people, persons, $1.5 million to assist persons to get into production. The government will be able to assist with lands in different areas. We are able to assist you with the seeds. We can give you assistance with all the inputs. You don't have to come up with any money. We are putting you in a position to begin production. And I really want to use this program to call on persons who want to not plant but reap, to say to you, we have a program for you to plant so that you can reap what you plant. Yes. We'll be back in just a moment.
This one's for the records. This is historic on Tuesday, May 5th. You can be a millionaire.
A lotto jackpot of
$1 million. Yes, you heard right. $1 million.
a new home, car, or that college education.
Lotto, you have to be in it to win it.
Next lotto jackpot.
$1 million.
Welcome back. Minister, when we took the last break, you were actually admonishing the people who seem to enjoy reaping what they don't sow. How critical is this topic in the sector? How seriously are we going to deal with this?
This issue is one not only affecting farmers and fishers too in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but the story is the same in Berbice, in Guyana. It's the same thing that you are hearing in Guave, in Grenada. If you go to St. Lucia, in Dennery, it's the same discussion. Farmers are complaining about this issue. And it goes back to the whole program, factor production, information. We're going to get the information in the highways and the byways because in the communities, persons have a good suspicion as to who these persons are. And we're going to work to ensure that we have a rehabilitative program using some of the resources that we have to bring persons into production. And as I noted earlier, we have seen where it has shown positive results in certain parts in Africa. And we are going to, alongside with the increased patrols by the police, the work of the cooperatives, to engender the spirit of production in persons who really had placed themselves in the margins and not want to be front and center as it pertains to participating in actual work.
Okay, somebody wants to know if you have already identified export markets for the eggs.
Yes, we have started a discussion with the government and people of Trinidad and Tobago. And what we are seeing now is that with the interruptions in the international supply chain for food, the British Virgin Islands have also requested for us to export eggs to them. And with a significant percentage of the Vincentian population being there, of course, when they heard the news that we had such a great supply of eggs, they went to the supermarkets and said to them, why don't you buy from my home country instead of buying from country X? Buy from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And it brings me to the very important point of shipping. We have to say thanks to the boat owners in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And when you go up to the Grenadines wharf and you see the vessels going to and fro, going down to the Grenadines, there's a lot of spill-off that is happening from that because you have now engendered in our history, in our skill sets, a cadre of persons who are accustomed to the sea. And because of that, we have several vessels that leave St. Vincent and the Grenadines to go throughout the islands. And I had a conversation with the owners of Admiral Bay 1, 2, and 3, and Melinda to see if we can go up the islands more often and be able to carry containerized cargo, because we have a lot of losses when we use the current modalities to transport a lot of the goods, a lot of spoilage from time to time. And again, the traders would lose, and it would definitely have an impact on the ability to pay the farmers. So we are addressing the issue of the shipping, and we are doing this on a platform where St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we're working with other member states of CARICOM, we're working with other member states of the OECS, and all of this is a part of the COVID-19 food security plan for the OECS and CARICOM. So
tell us a little bit more about that plan, if you may.
Yes. So what we did is that we did an assessment of the food import bill of CARICOM. We disaggregated the bill by commodity. So we know what is the value of the beef imported from outside of the region, the rice imported, how much we import as it pertains to vegetables. And now we look at all the production bases within CARICOM. And those countries that have an absolute advantage in some cases to produce certain commodities, we're asking those governments to give a special stimulus package to boost production in those areas. And it comes back to the point of the whole movement of these goods now, pursuant to the revised Treaty of Chagaramas, if you're speaking about CARICOM, and revised Treaty of Bassitia, if you're speaking about the OECS, to be able to reduce the food import bill of CARICOM. And I'm certain that TERRAL would want to go a bit more into the food import bill.
Yes. So CARICOM has a food import bill of 10 million EC dollars, 3.7 million US dollars. And the data show that CARICOM is actually a net food importer. When you look at export versus import as it relates food, there's a deficit of 2.2 billion US dollars, which equates to about 5.8 billion EC dollars. So what we are trying to achieve with this food security plan is not just to stabilize during the crisis, but we have a vision, a long-term perspective, so that we can rise stronger out of this crisis. And if we look, for instance, the boats, I think the minister will touch on it, but I want to touch on it from an economic point of view. Many, which has triggered many discussion. Why are we buying boats now? Why don't we just take the money and give it out, as a relief? Giving relief is part of the package, and that's important. But relief does not generate economic activity, and relief does not puts us on a path towards rapid economic recovery and achieving the economic transformation that was envisioned in the 2020 budget. So boats, buying of boats, 4-stroke engine. The buying of these boats will put us on a platform of efficiency, cost efficiency. When you compare these new boats with the ones that are used now, they are far more efficient in terms of fuel usage. So we have a cost reduction there. And the boats, if I'm advised correctly, they have a cooling system. So you have the hygiene and sanitation stuff in storing. So the boats bring with it efficiency and hygiene standards, which is imperative for us to tap into certain international markets. Hygiene, quality standards. Even with cannabis, we see the importance of quality standards. Now, fish, why do you target fish? And I think you mentioned before, what is one of the good things about this whole boat initiative is that the boats will be coming up and Vincentians will be getting jobs, immediate income. And there's the education component to it, the skill component. And the long-term view now is with respect to what triggers growth in an economy. You don't hear this term often in conventional discussions, but one of the most important things for economic growth, especially in OECS small open economies, is what they call the terms of trade. That is the value of the items that you export, the unit value, compared to the value of the items you import. if you look at Siemens and OECS countries, we were growing at 5% in 1990s, and the rate of growth has been declining. Because the value of the items we have been exporting have been declining, but the value of oil, for instance, has been increasing. In 1990s, the price per barrel of oil was about $24 US. It increased to about $150 US in 2008, which helped to, exacerbate the crisis. So for us to achieve rapid growth following this COVID crisis, we have to focus on commodities that have high export value, like arrowroot, like cannabis, and fish. That is the reason why the value of fish has grown exponentially, because its export value is high. And we also have to leverage the cheap oil. We have to leverage that. We have to leverage the cheap oil and use it to fuel the economic recovery, because oil is a critical factor of production, a critical factor input in all aspect of production. Even with LIAT needs oil. If we can capitalize and start stockpiling oil, benefit from the cheap oil. I mean, last year oil price, early up this year, oil price was about $87 US per barrel, and it has declined significantly to below $20 US per barrel. Imagine if we were to capitalize and leverage the cheap oil to fuel the economic recovery. So that is my perspective on the boats in particular, and I think the minister could add.
Well, before the minister adds, I'm going to ask him to talk about your role as the minister within CARICOM that's responsible for leading this charge for agriculture, and also to tell us if we should expect rises in the cost of food during this crisis. I think a lot of people would like to know that.
Well, I was very humbled to be given the opportunity to serve not only my community and my country, but the sub-regional and the regional community, OECS and CARICOM, as we are all working together to address a lot of the common denominators that we have to face as we fight against the vagaries of COVID-19. When you look at the food import bill, we have seen a huge space in agriculture for economic activities to take place where we can spur growth if we reduce the food import bill significantly. And there's buy-in throughout all the member states in CARICOM and the OECS. We can't fly to meetings anymore, so we're meeting on Zoom. And we're having regular meetings, and I want to congratulate the secretariats, OECS and CARICOM, for mobilizing these meetings and these sessions. So you have the ministers with their technicians meeting on a very regular basis, and we're sharing the information. Back to the point that TERRAL made about information being a factor of production, because in St. Vincent and the Grenadines now, I have all the information, not only on the imports from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but the imports into all the other member states. Yes. And we are going to disseminate this to producers in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, because the issue that was raised about the markets, we are not only looking at the traditional Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, Antigua and Barbuda and St. Kitts markets. We are now looking at it in a broader sense, to the point that we have to have a significant increase in food, in the production of food from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, so that we can supply all internal needs and also the needs of the other member states of CARICOM and also in the OECS. So you're going to have a significant opportunity, for example, in Suriname, in Guyana, in Belize and Jamaica, to export certain things on the CARICOM platform. There are already existing relationships between St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Grenada. So even though you could get the commodity from another member state, because the private sector, they've been working for quite a while to put their investment strategies together. They have already wedded to each other. It is going to be a very exciting period. And while some persons are seeing gloom and doom, COVID-19 brings challenges, but it brings a lot of opportunities.
And I think that's the perfect note on which to end this evening's program. We've already gone over time. So many things we could say, so many things we can talk about, but time is time. Thank you very much, Minister, for being here. I myself learned a lot. Thank you very much, TERRAL MAPP. We'll come back another day. That's our program for today. Thanks for watching Roundtable Talk. See you again next week, Wednesday. Goodbye.